Hey folks, it's Lucid, and we got a new patch, Dominion 6.25 for Dominion 6. And it's not a huge patch, but there's some pretty cool changes in it. So we are going to cover it, whereas we normally only cover like the big patches. But yeah, so there's some cool things. Probably the most cool thing, I don't know, there's two really cool things. One of them is Pillar of Truth, which we're going to show you. It's a new item. So here it is. This is the new item, Pillar of Truth. It's Earth 4, Astral 4 to make. It's a unique artifact, so there can only be one in the game, and it can be wished for, which means controlling it is not ever guaranteed, even though you've made it. It is pretty fucking cool. It gives 4 magic resistance. It requires 20 strength, and it's heavy, so it can't be magic phased into a province. So, for example, if you know an army doesn't have the Pillar of Truth, like there's no way to like get it there. Like you can't, well, I guess you could magic phase a guy in that's holding a heavy item. That's kind of a weird thing. I don't think heavy blocks magic phase, but it probably should if you think about it. But anyway, you can't like do carrier eagles or whatever and send it there. Actually, I don't know. I think teleports and stuff, it does make sense. Like you can teleport a monolith. You can teleport a Pillar of Truth. Anyway, yeah, so it's heavy. It requires a boatload of strength. You have to have a ton of strength. Gives you 4 magic resistance, but none of this is like the real thing. The real thing is this spell. It's a battlefield-wide enchantment that grants true sight and false regen, as well as increasing the magic resistance of all units on the battlefield. This is the way to deal with Legion's Demise. This will effectively hard counter Legion's Demise, but there can only be one of them in the game. So Legion's Demise got a very well-deserved, but very significant nerf in the last patch. But it's still a good spell. It still will effectively put a timer on most all units in the battlefield. They will eventually die. There's ways now. That doesn't mean you win, though. Like, just because you put a timer, essentially, on the enemy army, there's still a lot of things they can do to win the battle. They can win it quickly. They can do other wipes that are going to wipe your guys. There's a bunch of things that they can do. So I think it was in a pretty good state after the last patch. It was still a very strong spell, but it's a level 9 spell. It should be strong. So what they have done is they have introduced a hard counter to it, something that will essentially completely stop Legion's Demise and other kind of glamour-based false damage. False damage is very strong in the game right now. So this is basically a hard counter to some of the false damage stuff, especially Legion's Demise. And you can see it gives 2 MR also. So yeah, it's a really good thing, but there can only be one of them. This would stack with anti-magic as well, since it's a 2 MR buff. So it's good even if you're not fighting into Legion's Demise. Yeah, this is really good. This is going to be one of the main artifacts that people are trying to control in the late game. And certainly this is a bargain to forge. It's one of the first artifacts you should probably consider forging. The only downside of forging it is there's a decent chance somebody at some point is going to want to steal it from you. If you're the game leader, they're going to try to steal it from you because you're the game leader. If you're not the game leader, there's a good chance the game leader is going to try to steal it from you so that they can have it. So it's a very good artifact, highly likely to get stolen by Wish, but, you know, what are you going to do? Yeah, very, very good new spell. I like that it's limited. At first, I was thinking this was just going to be like an expensive greater artifact, but I think if it were expensive, it would be spammed out. Like even this is still this would be basically become a prerequisite for all late game fights, just to get the 2 magic regen, and the false regen is nice. It would be interesting if there were a very expensive version of this that were spammable, you know, like if there were like a 60-60 version that you could spam out. But then I think this is probably a better solution, because I think if this is spammable, then Legion's Demise isn't very good anymore. So anyway, very cool item, new unique artifact, another reason to go Construction 9. Very cool. Coming back to the patch notes, there is another cool ability, and it is for angel-like beings, and it is called Praise. We're going to spend a bit of time talking about that. Okay, so first you may ask yourself, what are angel-like units? Well, there's a few nations that get them. Most of the Christian-themed nations have some access to some kind of them. So things which are like Jewish or Christian in origin often get it. So think nations like Marignon, as we see here. Think nations like Ind. Think ancient nations like Gath and Ashdod and Hinnom. Yeah, so there's a fair number of nations that get them in the different eras. This praise ability, it's got a tag 5. Now, so basically how this works is it only works in friendly Dominion, and it will passively raise the candles up to 1 per month. I don't think this stacks across multiple units. Like, I don't think if you have 100 angels, you could raise it 5 per month. Like, I don't think the cap is 1 per unit. I think this is a cap across all praise units, right? Which makes sense. It could be pretty strong otherwise. But it will raise it only up to the number you have. So if you think about it, if you had a praise of 1, it literally wouldn't be able to do anything because you have to be in friendly dominion for it to work. And it could only raise it up to 1, right? So it doesn't do anything. Praise 3, which a fair number of units have. Again, I think these guys have praise 3. Yeah. Praise 3 has a very narrow set of situations it works in. It will work when you're in Dominion 1, but not at Dominion 3 yet. It will literally work specifically from raising up from 2 to 3. Yeah. Oh, and from 1 to 2. It can raise from 1 to 2 and from 2 to 3. That's it. Right? So a very narrow set of circumstances it works. One thing I don't know, but what we'll have to find out, is where in the turn order this process is. And that's important because, for example, if it processes after Dominion spreads, then it could be a province with hostile Dominion you might still be able to praise in if your Dominion moves in there that turn. Right? The same thing is relevant for preaching. Does it happen before or after preaching? You would want to know this because if you're preaching in a province, it could be praise is wasted, right? Because it happens after you've preached things up. But it could be if you're preaching in an enemy dominion, you might be able to flip it and then have your praise kick in. So this is one of the things. It's going to depend heavily on where this is in the turn order, and I have no idea right now. So somebody will probably figure it out and put it in the comments. I mean, we could probably test it. Let me see if I can test it. Okay, so I've got this province. It's hostile Dominion 2. I'm going to preach in it 3 times. And then I've got a bunch of angels here. And so we'll see if it raises it up. Like, ideally, I think if it worked, it would be 2. If preaching happens first. Otherwise, it would be capped out at being 1. But then it's hard to tell because, like, enemy Dominion could push back in. Yeah, it doesn't look like we flipped it here. So, 1 second. Let's try again. Let's do only preaching twice now. So this will just barely push it to friendly dominion. Oh, no, it is friendly dominion. So, but it capped it at 1. So it doesn't look like the preach worked. Or the preach worked. This is going to be really hard to test. Somebody really needs to look in the code because it's like, I could have pushed it up to 2, but then enemy dominion could have come in and pushed it back down to 1. This is going to be hard to test. But yeah, so there's a bunch of other units that have it. And it can have high values. Like this guy has a praise value of 4. I think I have a seraph here. This has a... Oh, dom pushing. The guys that have dom spreader don't have praise. So praise, one way to think about it is it's like a weaker version of dom spreader. The harbinger has praise 5, which is pretty high. The archangel, praise 4. The angel of fury has no praise. So kind of cool. There are units in that the end, like Gath line gets, that have really high praise values. Like the Ophon gets praise 8. So this can potentially get your dominion up very high in a province. The Shayot gets dom spreader, so it doesn't get it. The Merkval, which, do I have one? Oh yeah, here's one. It gets praise 4. And this is a passive ability. It's not like you do anything, right? It's like dom. It's basically like a weak version of dom spreader. So it's very cool. I like it. Praise 6 on the ARL. So very cool things. That's the new praise ability. And to repeat, it's going to increase the dominion passively in a province, so long as you have 1 to start with, a friendly. It's the chance of it going up is per unit. It's 10% times the number, so there's a 40% chance to raise it by 1. It's capped, I believe, at 1 per province. Like, it can't go up. Let me actually just test this. Let's, because we have a fair number of angels here. We're not preaching. If we just sit here, then we should see... Oh, maybe it took a candle here this turn. Maybe it's not working. It must not be working. Because these angels, I had read somewhere in the comments, and one of the forums, people saying it wasn't working. I don't think it's working. It will work. They'll fix the bug, but there's some bug, I think, right now that's keeping it from working. Because we should have the province here. The dominion should be creeping up every turn, but you can see it actually stagnated back down because we had a candle get pushed in here and we're not preaching. So yeah, clearly this is bugged at the moment, but that's how it's supposed to work. And so Illinois will certainly fix it and get it working. But yeah, so basically it's a 30% chance to raise it. It'll raise up and cap at 3. After that point, this ability won't do anything. But so anyway, I think that's super interesting. Let's go back and look at the patch notes. Okay. You can now see the host version and current version. There's a battle replay bug, basically, where if you're playing on a different version of the game than the, like when the host processed the turn, you can get replay bugs. This will help identify those, so really nice. This is kind of weird miscellaneous bugs here. And then magic weapons didn't work when repelling, so I think that would mean like things like ethereal and stuff could negate it. Twilight now removes enchantments from mounts. Scouts get a better message when looking at forts. None of these things really matter that much. This is huge. This change has been like 20 years in the making. So I think they have finally made it. Brace yourselves. If you script a resistance spell that's going to increase your resistances, but you already have resistance, the AI will now do that. Oh. We've been waiting for this since I was a wee lad. I was a tiny boy sitting on my father's knee. And I was saying, Dad, when will we get the resistance spells that the AI will actually cast when I script it? Dad said, be patient, son. The devs will fix it. And they finally have. So this actually is huge. The AI was very finicky. We did tons of things trying to figure out when it would cast it, when it wouldn't. It had to do with exactly the thresholds of different things. It was really annoying, and I've kind of forgotten the conclusions exactly we came to. But it was very finicky when it would and wouldn't cast it. And it was not even like, it wasn't even a pure threshold. I think it had to do with like, did it come from gear? Did it not? It was so weird. It was a very bad system. When you script something, it should cast it in general. And now it does. So that's amazing. That's great. There's this cool thing I didn't even know about. There's a weather screen. Well, I'll show you that. So when you attack a province, do we have Heat Dominion? Okay, we have Heat Dominion over here in End. So if you attack a province, if you hit F2 in the battle, you get a weather panel. So it tells you if it's raining, it tells you what the temperature is, and it tells you the vision conditions, and then also the Dominion in the province. Very cool. Okay. So you can now see the temperature info in the F2 weather screen, a screen I didn't even know exists, but now we do. It fixed sound effects for some tramplers. I hope that was like the behemoth and the elephants. The sound for those was atrocious, so hopefully those are better mixed. Fatigue from flying and trampling didn't work well. Cost for Twiceborn was incorrect for some casters. I'm not familiar with what that bug was. Battlefield-wide spells can no longer be cast indoors. I believe this is only referring to like assassination type battles where it's going to be in a building. And specifically, it's going to make Howl Assassins not as good. It's going to be... That was one of my favorite things to do. I think you'll still be able to do it sometimes, like if the battle takes place in an open field. But if it's in a room or something, I don't think it'll work. And then I guess you would need to know, like, what are the chances of it being in such a place? I don't know, but I think Howl was kind of cheesy in assassination battles. So I think that's really what this is for. It's going to be really hard to use Howl in assassinations now. Spell light effects no longer work since last patched. I'm actually not sure what that is. And then I think some more monsters got dark vision. They changed the digestion value for some things with swallow attacks. And the last thing I was going to show you is the Wailing Lady got tweaked. This is a unit only available to middle-aged Airmore. And let me pull it up. I think she's right here. So she hasn't really changed that much. All the stats are the same, except she now has a life drain attack as well. So I think this actually is a pretty big change to her, because it now gives... One of her problems was she didn't really have any survivability. Like lictors and things like that at least have some protection. She has ethereal, which is great, but, you know, the things that are going to be killing lictors, usually it's stuff like nuking from ranged. So you really need like HP or resistances to like resist a lot of those things. And the Wailing Ladies will tend to kind of like die by the same things that will kill everything else. Now they have a life drain attack. And what that means is if you can get quickness on these guys, they absolutely are merciless. They're just going to be deleting tile after tile. And while they're doing it, they're going to be hitting things. So this is kind of crazy. Like these guys are very, very lethal now. And this will hope, you know, this is the full life drain, by the way. This isn't capped. So, you know, they can heal 6 hit points a turn. And I believe it goes up. I can't remember if you can hit double your cap or 50% more. I can't remember what the life drain cap is, but you can either get these guys up to 30 or 40 hit points, depending on what that cap is. I forget now. And that's a significant increase to tankiness. Not only are these guys going to be able to wither chip damage a lot better, things like ranged attacks, but they're going to have a higher kind of threshold they can hit so they can absorb major nukes better as well. So, you know, things like the things that really scare Airmore, things like wither bones and things like that. So yeah, this is getting a life drain attack added onto a chassis, I think this makes Wailing Ladies a real contender when you're looking at what to summon every turn. Yeah, so that's a pretty big change and a buff to middle-aged Airmore. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of nations which are not happy about Airmore getting any kind of buff. So very cool. But they're still very expensive. So I don't want to go suggesting these guys are like broken now or overtuned. They're very expensive. I think they're like 7 death gems a piece or something. They're very pricey. But it's a very good unit now. I think worthy of that price. So cool. I hope you guys enjoyed patch notes. I'm going to be having a video come out today or tomorrow for Nidavellir. We're doing a national overview and then a pretender design. Hope you enjoy that. And then, we'll be picking back up with the Shiniyama Let's Play. And we'll see you guys then. Cheers.